Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Seem oddly alone up here. I know it's a group effort. That's your cue, guys. Where's Shaq? Okay, he left? Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashraf al-anbiya al-mursalin wa ala alihi wa-tayyibin wa-tahirin wa-sahabatihi wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin. Amma ba'd. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا. وقال الله تعالى في آية الأخرى يا أيها الرسول كلوا من الطيبات واعملوا الصالحات. صدق الله العظيم. قال نبينا صلى الله عليه وسلم المؤمن قوي خير وحب إلى الله من مؤمن ضعيف أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. So I want to welcome all of you to sort of a different approach to our evening programs. Normally we have things that are very overtly quote-unquote religious. And today we're coming to talk about prophetic fitness, the sunnah of healthy living, and it's almost like, okay, well, this doesn't fit with our normal approach towards our evening programs. But in actuality, it really does. I have with me today two brothers from Janwar Fitness, two of the trainers. To my far left, Hafiz Mustafa Ashfaq, and to my immediate left, almost Hafiz Shakil Shafiuddin. A couple of bars left. And my name is Saad. All three of us, we work as trainers. All three of us do part-time for this company. We're not here to sell you on the company. We're here actually to speak about a very important topic, which is this idea of being fit. And we come in right away with the question of why are we here tonight? And the reality is that most of us, when we're looking at why we are here, some of us come because it's our normal Friday routine. Others are coming specifically for the topic, and your expectations may be a little different than our presentation, but we hope this is not the only time we come here. And the reason I'm saying that is because tonight's going to be a little more theory, it's going to be more information, but in the future, if there's interest for the sisters separately with sisters, female trainers, and the brothers separately with us, we can show you exercises and workouts and things that we can do. But the main reason we're here tonight is because we recognize that the Prophet ﷺ, he was the best of all examples. And being the best of all examples, his example, and I think Shakil and I were just talking about this the other day, that if Allah Ta'ala wanted, he could have made the Prophet ﷺ look overtly unhealthy. Why? So people don't have that focus on health. If Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala wanted, he could have made the Prophet ﷺ not care about his food and his diet. But there are hadith that are about this. If Allah Ta'ala wanted, the Prophet ﷺ could not have cared about how he looked, but there are hadith clearly about it. And so what we see is that as much as we push Quran and hadith and prayer and sadaqah and coming to the masjid, etc., and these are important concepts in our lives, we can't begin to overlook the fact that the sunnah goes beyond this. The term sunnah, according to some of the scholars, is al-muwadhabatu an amalihi ma tarkihi ahyanan. That it's the regular, consistent acting on a certain practice that the Prophet ﷺ would leave at times. And his healthy lifestyle was a regular practice that he would engage in. And so when we're here tonight, we're really here to learn about this one vital part of the life of the Prophet ﷺ that fueled and aided the other areas. You're talking about the migration to Madinatul Munawwara, going out into the battlefield, being able to go and travel by foot, being able to sometimes take, unfortunately, physical abuse, to have to live with very little food and drink. All of these things, it was physically taxing as well. And we cannot separate the two. Our deen is not all about soul, nor is it only about body, body, body. It's the combination of both of them to form the perfect balance. And we see that in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when he mentions that the strong believer, and this is in Sahih Muslim, the strong believer, khayrun wa ahab, is better and more beloved to Allah Ta'ala than the weak believer. But there is goodness in both of them. Meaning just by virtue of being a believer, there's goodness in us. Now, as a tangent, if you look at the word believer, it's mu'min. When a person accepts Islam, what do they become? Muslim. So when Allah Ta'ala uses the word mu'min, we see in Surah Al-Hujurat that He actually distinguishes between the two. He distinguishes between the two, meaning, قالت الأعراب آمنا. The A'rab, the Bedouins used to say آمنا, we've become believers. Then, how does it continue? قل. Any hafad over here? لم تؤمنوا ولكن قولوا أسلمنا. When they would say we became believers, Allah said, no. You're still submitters, level stage 1, and then over time you become believers. The word Muslim is a general term for the submitter. But here the Prophet didn't say al-Muslimu qawi. He said mu'min qawi. Which shows what? There's already spiritual strength, but what is mentioned over here was speaking with a strong believer, by virtue of being mu'min, they're already strong spiritually. But physically, that strength really helps to make this person more viable as a means of spreading goodness to the world. And so that's my brief introduction today to why we're here. I'm hopefully not going to be speaking too much because you've already heard me 2 khutbahs today and you hear me other times as well. But we have 2 others next to me who inshallah will be going through quite a bit of what we have to discuss. So go ahead, jump in. Mind, body, and soul, a holistic view of health.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazak for that interview, for that introduction. So today, as Sheikh Saad kind of mentioned, we're not going to be really talking about, hey, this is what you should eat, this is what you should not eat, these are the activities that you should do, and these are the activities that you should not do. We're going to take a little bit deeper dive into health and fitness. We're going to really talk about what does it mean to be healthy and fit. So when we talk about being healthy and fitness, we don't just talk about, a strong person who's got big muscles and who's like ripped or whatever the social construct today is for being healthy. When we talk about being healthy, we're talking about this holistic health of mind, body, and soul, right? I mean, if a person is physically fit, but they're spiritually ill, or if they're mentally ill, then they're not truly healthy, right? That doesn't mean they're healthy. And it's really interesting that, if you really look into depth, a physically fit person, like, you'll see something like a wrestler or some of these bodybuilders and whatnot, and then they're dying at these young ages, and then you find out that they had all these mental issues, and they had all these, substance abuse problems and whatnot. So then you start to realize that person wasn't truly healthy. I mean, he looked healthy, or, he or she might have looked healthy and strong. And another thing that, just before I move on, when I say healthy and strong, the reason I equate those two is because strength truly does equal health, right? So if someone thinks that, I don't exercise, I'm just skinny, and I can walk 10 miles, I must be healthy, it truly isn't. If you're not truly strong, you're truly not healthy, right? That's just one of the basic principles that we need to kind of understand and digest, men and women, both alike, right? Being just skinny doesn't equal health. Being physically strong actually equals healthy. But when we say holistic, the reason we want to make sure is because we want to make sure that you understand you have to be mentally fit, you have to be spiritually fit, and you have to be physically fit.
Does anyone know the word for health in the Arabic language? It's the same as Urdu, by the way. Sihha. When a hadith is the strongest level in terms of authenticity, what do we call it? Sahih, same word. Meaning all the components, for Sahih Hadith, you have 5 components. Every component must be strong and quote-unquote healthy, sound, to make the Hadith Sahih, healthy, unencumbered, be completely authentic. The believer, we have 3 areas. We have the mind, body, and the soul. And unfortunately, when we think about spiritual health, sometimes we look at it from a perspective that's a little problematic. Let me explain. So a person says, I'm praying every day, I read Quran, but their mind isn't healthy. They're very busy on social media. They're very busy, they're sleeping very little. They're taking in information that is sort of clogging up their mind from being able to see the world properly. Or they're saying, I'm praying 5 times a day, but they're having early back pain. I'm not talking about, your 60s, 70s. It's talking about like 20s, 25, my back is hurting, my knees are giving out. So if a person's knees are giving out, I'm going to ask you the question. Person's knees are giving out at 25 years old. No, he had some knee surgery, so I'm not trying to call him out. Is prayer more difficult? Yes. Is it more difficult to engage in certain acts of worship? Yes. If a person's mind is preoccupied by all the social media that they're seeing, and they stand for prayer, and they are standing for prayer, is their focus on Allah? Probably not. Why? Because the soul is contained inside this container, the jism, the jasad, the body. And if the container itself is polluted, if it's destroyed, like you have a really good driver, really good driver, and he sits behind an old car that's rusted and one axle is giving out and then the brakes aren't working, there's only so much he can do or she can do. So when we talk about spiritual health, we have to combine this idea of our mental health, we have to combine this idea of our physical health, and those allow us to create pathways into our spiritual health. Okay. So what are we here not to talk about? We're not here to tell you, go on this diet. We're not here to say, join Genre Fitness. We're not here to say, everyone gets 6-packs. We're not here to say, if your arms are not ripping out of your shirt, then you're not strong. That's not what we're here for. We're not here to encourage fad diets. We're not here to encourage any of those things. Now look at all three of us. Those two guys are definitely stronger than me. They're bigger than me. They lift more than me, etc. And one of the purposes of showing this is to show that, look, health is not all one size. Some people will be fit, strong, but they won't be really that big. Others will maybe have lower body fat percentage. Others will look, quote unquote, more normal, but they're still able to be what? Functional. And this is what we want to get into today. Functional health, functional strength, because that's what the Sunnah is. The Sunnah is about being functional. The Prophet ﷺ did not give us 50 prayers in a day, even though Allah had initially prescribed that. It was then changed. It's not functional, it's not practical. Tahajjud, قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا نِصْفَهُ أَوْ انْقُصْ مِنْهُ قَلِيلًا أَوْ زِدْ عَلَيْهِ. Half the night, less than half the night. It's not functional to do it all the time. When the Prophet ﷺ would see people fasting every day, what would he do? Shabash? No, he would speak against it. When al-Mu'mineen Zainab radiallahu anha was praying tahajjud in the masjid, and then one day the Prophet walked in the masjid, he saw from the beam a rope hanging, and he asked one of the companions, what is this? They said, oh, that's your wife, al-Mu'mineen Zainab radiallahu anha. She gets so tired in the prayer that in tahajjud she ties the rope around her waist so she can continue standing. What did the Prophet say? Good job? No, he said, remove that. Because no one will try to overcome this deen except the deen will overwhelm them. Balance is going to be key. And that's what we're here for. Okay, go ahead, take it away. What does it mean to be healthy?
Yeah, so what does it really mean to be healthy? And everybody has their own ideas. So what we want to kind of talk about what does it really mean to be healthy? There are a couple of scientific indicators that we have today that we can talk about. And there's a lot to it. There's no one answer to the question, what does it mean to be healthy? If a person says, oh, it just means to be strong, or it means to do 40 push-ups, or it means I can run 5 miles without losing breath. There's not one correct answer for what does it mean to be healthy. So we have all these ideas. So truly, what does it mean to be healthy? It means to be healthy means to be functionally strong, number one. Number two, right? Having a good VO2 max is definitely important.
What's VO2 max?
So VO2 max is basically how much oxygen your body absorbs during exercise, right? So the healthier you are, the healthier tissues that you have, the more oxygen that your body will absorb during exercise, and the more carbon dioxide it will expel during this time. So I mean, this is a little technical to talk about that, but we don't want to go too much into that. What we wanted to talk more about was...
Let's stay here for a moment. Yeah. There are other markers as well for health, so VO2 max. Now I feel like, well, I don't know. There are methods to be able to gauge this. Smartwatches work very well, and there's other tests to do this as well. But let's just take some simple ways. You're walking up the stairs, you're a young individual, and you're walking up the stairs, and someone might say, well, I'm not young. We'll get into that as well.
Yeah.
And you begin to see yourself losing breath. You can't catch your breath. You begin to break out into a sweat. These are markers and indicators that there's health that's lacking. Now, again, we're not saying here that you don't have veins popping out, you're not benching pressing 300 pounds. Functional. Why functional? Because if we cannot walk up the stairs without feeling winded, or we're unable to go up the stairs without having our bodies give out on us, then from a functional perspective, how well can we take care of our families? When we have to help our elderly parents to their rooms, will that be possible? When we have to be able to take the groceries up 2 flights of stairs to our apartment, would that be possible? Functional strength and functional health is embedded within the Sunnah. Now let's think for a moment with VO2 max. The Prophet ﷺ, in a state of injury in the battle of Uhud, where did he climb? Up the mountain. His health and strength was so functional that in a time where he actually bled profusely to the extent that he went unconscious, his body was still strong enough to be able to go up the mountain in a time of need. Pre-Islam, when the revelation would come, where would the Prophet go? Up the cave Hira. And Khadija radiallahu anha used to pack him food. And sometimes when it would run out, he would come down to her. But other times he would just continue in his yatahannath, meditation. We don't know exactly what he did, but some type of focus and fikr of Allah Ta'ala or on Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala. So who would bring the food up to him? Anyone know? Khadija radiallahu anha. How old was she then when she would climb? Anyone ever go to Cave Hira? Did you go up it? It's hard, right? Just to go from the base of the street to the base of the mountain. A person's like, that's it, I'm done. Then to take the paved stairs all the way up, a person, it really has to be in shape. How old was she when she used to bring the food to the Prophet ﷺ? In her mid-50s. After bearing 6 children for the Prophet ﷺ and children in prior marriages as well. Now think, functionally speaking, how much did she support the deen by supporting him? No one thought twice of it. But by her physically being able to go check on him and being able to bring food, he was able to stay there longer and more focus and more attention to what Allah wanted, and subsequently he was given revelation. And what's another sign of health? Go ahead.
I was going to say, we're talking about the Prophet ﷺ, but how do we kind of bring this into our lives? When we look at our lives, one example that comes to mind is Ramadan. In Ramadan, there's a lot of physical strain that goes on your body while fasting, and then come Tarawih time, you're standing there. Usually people walk out after 4 or 8. Very few people nowadays stay the whole 20, especially the younger crew. You'll see the older uncles, alhamdulillah, like my father when he was alive, like 20 wasn't, like 8 wasn't an option. It was 20 or bust. So what do we mean by being healthy? You should be healthy, going back to the beginning when we said mind, body, and soul. So your mind has to be trained to be healthy, to go through 20 rak'ahs of salah, especially if you're not hafiz, you're just listening to random words coming out and you're not Arab, you're not understanding what's going on. You're literally just standing there listening to someone recite. And sometimes if the reciter is not a good reciter, you're just kind of standing there and you're not, you physically and mentally don't have strength to go through all of that in Ramadan itself. So when we think about health, it's not only the Prophet ﷺ did all this and he was amazing and he was the Prophet. What about us? Because we have to try to emulate the Prophet ﷺ as much as possible.
No, absolutely. And there's other traditional markers of strength. And when we look at mental strength as well, fortitude, like our focus, 5 minutes is now the attention span. But let's look at another one. Shaq, you were telling me the other day another historical marker of strength and good health. Grip. Yeah, grip strength. Go ahead, you can go into grip strength. Okay, well, I don't want to take the floor from him. He's our head trainer. It's like your ustad is sitting next to you and then you're talking. A little embarrassing. But grip strength has historically been another sign. Now, grip strength, now you might think, well, what does grip strength have to do with anything? If you look at the Prophet ﷺ, let's describe him for a moment. One of you from the audience, you tell me, give me one description of the Prophet ﷺ. Bashar, I'm looking at you. Good. So he wasn't extremely tall. He was taller than the people who were small, but he was not as tall as the tallest person. He was mid, but a little above mid height. Good. What else do we know about the Prophet ﷺ? Sorry? His color. So he was not dark, nor was he light. He was, if you took the midpoint between dark and light, it was slightly lighter than that. Slightly lighter than that. What else do we know? Describe his body to me. Yes. 63 years. 23 which were documented in hadith. Never at one point did his stomach ever protrude his chest. Never once. In a society where if you had a large belly, it was a sign of wealth and luxury. But the Prophet did not give way, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to societal measures of what is considered to be popular or opulence, etc. He remained fit. Not in one occasion did his stomach ever surpass his chest. What else do we know about his chest? Who can tell me? Come on, people, tell me.
Wide.
It was wide. He had a broad chest. He had a broad, thick, muscular chest. The hadith mentions between the two shoulders there was a lot of flesh. What do we know about his hands? Now getting to the topic here. His hands were very soft, but they were fleshy, they were strong. You can see muscle in the hands. What does grip strength show? Grip strength shows what? That this person is engaged in constant work in the household, outside the household, at work, whatever the volunteering the Prophet did sallallahu alaihi wasallam before and then through this prophethood. He was very much engaged in the community, grip strength. So that's another sign. What's another sign?
Of the prophets?
No, of historically.
No, so the grip strength is actually very important. So, I mean, recently we were just reading this scientific journals and stuff and whatnot, and they actually came out and said that the stronger, the better your grip strength is as you get older.
Yes.
In science, they say longevity, right? They say, okay, you know what? That means that's a sign of longevity. We know that as Muslims, there's certain things that we can take from science, and there's certain things that we have to realize is in the hands of Allah. So hayat is, your life length, your length of your life is in Allah's hands. We don't know. We can't say if you stay strong today, you're going to live to 100. We can't say that, right? We know that Allah can take us at any time from anything, anyhow. But just generally speaking, right? In general terms, when they say longevity, that means the quality of life is much better for a much longer period of time. So instead of having diseases and issues and health problems at an older age, you are in better physical condition or better health in your old age. So one of the key indicators, just recently they were talking about this, is actual grip strength. How much can you hold? And I don't know if anyone saw this recently, but I believe Sylvester Stallone somewhere around 72, 75 years old, and he was literally lifting up these two 45-pound plates with his and showing off his grip strength. So that's an actual indicator of health, right? It's interesting because a lot of times people don't associate it. They think it's vanity for us to look strong or be strong. They really think it's vanity. In reality, all the Sahaba and the Prophet, if you go back, in fact, if you go back even 200 years, I know there was a picture that came out recently, about 150 years ago, the biggest man, the fattest man in the world. It was like a show. That people would come and look at this guy, and literally he was the average size of the human being today. In today's world, this is the most obese that society has ever been is today. We've never had this issue 50, 100 years ago. Never, ever did we ever have this issue about 100 years ago. If you go back before the industrial age in America, right? The industrial age happened around World War II. If you go back before that, obesity didn't exist. Many things didn't exist, actually. If you start going back in time, cancer didn't exist, right? We didn't have hypertension. We didn't have diabetes. We didn't have, atherosclerotic diseases. It was very rare. It was very rare. If someone had it, obviously it would be very difficult to diagnose at that time, but people weren't dying of the same things that people are dying of today.
What's interesting? This sign, this health marker, this is not just the journals of medicine. This is in hadith. On one occasion, Umar radiallahu anhu, and I have the citation, it's not over here, it's in a different set of slides that we did on nutrition once, and then I did a presentation on eating once. Umar radiallahu anhu, one time a man walked by him, and he was quite large. And when you're talking about large, you're talking about around the circumference around the waist. And so Umar radiallahu anhu said, "What is this?" He said, "Amir al-Mu'mineen, this is barakah. This is blessing." He said, "Bal huwa al-adhab. This is punishment. This is punishment."
It's true, because every disease starts from the stomach.
Yes.
People don't realize that. There's a saying, I remember when we used to be younger, they say, khate pite khanan ka. I mean, like this guy who's from somewhere. And there was mota taza. There's another word that people say in Urdu a lot in our culture, mota taza, like healthy and fresh when you're fat. It's very untrue. Everything starts from the stomach. Most diseases, pathologically, even today, they start from the stomach. Stomach is one of the biggest issues, one of the biggest factors in knowing your health. Just look at your belly. If your belly is protruding, you're definitely going to have some issues one way or the other. So we'll go to the next slide, which is.
I'm going to do two more things. A lot of modern day studies, they show that as you add inches to the weight, your heart health decreases and you're more likely to have a heart attack. And then it's also a clear marker that's connected to diabetes as well. And the next one is squatting. Squatting has historically been linked to longevity. Now, what Shakil mentioned, longevity is not how long you will live, because Allah knows best. But it's the quality of life, meaning that if you're going to live 60 years, it's 60 years of quality. If you're going to live 80 years, it's 80 years of quality. One dua my mom always makes, that she always makes dua that she wants to pass away before she becomes a quote-unquote burden on anyone. That's always been her dua. But the reality is that we can take steps to make sure we're not a quote-unquote burden. I'm not saying she's a burden. That's not the case. Mom, if you're listening, I didn't say that. But the point is what? That there are steps we can take. So with health, mobility is very important. There was a recent study that showed that the longevity of life is connected to squatting, and they looked at East Asian countries in particular. And they noted that in places like Japan, where women in their 80s and 90s who were still squatting had very high quality of life. Now, how did the Prophet ﷺ eat?
Squatting.
Squatting. And if you look at it, it wasn't like a baseball player. Let me take this off for a moment. Okay, I'll do it over here. So how would he squat? Well, this is how to use the restroom. Not on your toes, but on your heels. So on the heels, the squatting would exist. And if you look here, this is not an easy position to keep. And then the scholars of hadith, they mentioned what? When he would eat, slightly different. Toe over toe into the squat. And then he would eat like this. Now, just consider a person at 63. I'm 42. I challenge someone who's 40. I'm 42? 41? 42, yeah. I challenge someone else my age to do it and hold it for the length of a meal. It's not easy. But our Prophet ﷺ was a healthy person. And those small things we say, what's the big deal? It is a big deal. I'm not saying you have to throw away your dining tables. I didn't say that. What I'm saying is that these markers, as we're losing them in our lives, then it begins to become difficult to maintain health. The prophetic practice of being fit. Should I move forward?
Actually, the squatting thing is interesting because one more small point to make about that. One is, yes, it's definitely a good marker for longevity, but also that position to use the bathroom is proven to be much healthier for the gut health than sitting on the toilet like how we are sitting today. This chair invention has literally destroyed humanity to a certain extent.
Yes.
The way we sit here when we eat with the thing. And if you read the hadith, the Prophet never leaned back when he ate. This was one of his main characteristics of eating, was he never leaned back. He always would sit forward and he would eat and he would say, I'm eating like a slave, right? That's what he would say. So the point is that eating like this and using the washroom like this is extremely healthy for your gut. Imagine it, when you sit there and eat like this, the way the food travels down your stomach, is a different pathway, and also the impingement on the stomach prevents you from eating too much. And then when you're using the bathroom, the way you sit there, the sunnah is to put your hand here when you're using the bathroom. It will help you relieve faster, which is one of the bigger issues in the toilet. Sitting on a toilet is people have hemorrhoid problems. They can't pass stool fast enough. They get constipated. All these issues, all these gut issues actually can go away from just this eating this way and using the bathroom this way. And I always tell people, who have issues with their digestive system, is to install an East Asian toilet into your, like the old school toilets in the house. And
well, they have that invention now.
Yeah,
the squatty potty, but it's not the same.
It's not the same.
It's not the same because the thing is, you're still resting your bottom on something. The point of the squat, sitting on the squat in position and using the bathroom is you don't have a seat to rest on, right? People just sit there and they're just sitting there for like 15 minutes. The bathroom should be more, if someone's using the bathroom number 2, it shouldn't take more than 1 to 2 minutes, 3 minutes max, right? If you're there for 5, 6, 7 minutes, there's an issue.
probably because you're on your cell phone.
That too. So that's another huge issue, right?
That's a different topic.
That's a whole different topic.
Yeah.
So, next we're going to go into something that's really big that people love to talk about. The first thing they always ask me is, what should we eat? What should we not eat? What should we do? How do we lose weight? How do we lose weight? Nobody cares about getting healthy. This is a extremely stupid way to look at yourself and say, how do I get healthy? Nobody asks, how do I get healthy? Anybody who comes to me, the first thing they'll say is, how do I get rid of this? It's a stupid question. That's not the question you should be asking me. How can I get healthier? How can I prolong my quality of life? Not my life, but my quality of life. How can I make sure that I can pray properly until the end of my days? I can, not be a burden to my children. I can help my children. I can all do whatever they want to do in life, whatever your aspirations are. How can I, achieve those without, by staying healthy? And so this is where I'm going to kind of go into a little bit into, a little different branch.
Does everyone understand the difference between diet and dieting, by the way?
Dieting is, this fad that we have today. Oh, intermittent fasting, or water, just drink water for 10 days, or don't eat this. This is dieting. Diet is, what do you eat regularly? What's your normal? So the way we have to look at food is a lifestyle change. It's not about exactly what do we eat, what do we not eat. In today's world, it is so difficult to actually find wholesome food. When I say wholesome, I'm not just saying organic food, go get organic and, ring up your bill. But I will say this, I will say that good food does cost a lot of money. This is a reality. We have, community members who come to me and say, oh, that's very expensive. You do all kinds of things. You travel all around the world. You eat out in restaurants. You're buying all kinds of, things. You should be able to spend some money on your food as well. So yes, good food does cost a little bit of money, but the point here is to understand, what are we eating, right? I mean, we've become this, weird society in the last 50, 60 years where, it's been like just this huge brainwash of okay, everything's okay. These industrial foods are okay, packaged foods are okay, everything has to be easier, everything has to be faster, everything has to be quicker. You have no time to cook. You have, you should have pop this into the microwave, or take this package out and just dump it on your chicken, and your masala is, boom, done, right? If you really look at spices in the Indian lands, if you go back 50, 60 years, they used to have those little, all those little,
What is it called?
grinders, right? Yeah, all kinds of stuff. They had to grind their spices. They had to take it, fresh from the gardens. They had to grind it, then they had to mix it, and they had to make it, and then they would put it on. Today, they just dump it from a packet. So the reason I'm covering this is because a lot of the food that we have today, if you look at all the issues that we have in our community, especially in our community, I'll target our community, specifically, we have a huge incidence increase in cancer. We have a huge incidence increase in heart disease. We have a huge incidence increase in diabetes. And we have a huge incidence increase in hypertension, right? This is, every single person here definitely has someone in their family who's dealing with one of these issues, and cancer is just rampant, right? I mean, it's rampant. Everywhere I hear, oh, this person's got cancer, that person's got cancer. How is this happening? Right? How is this happening? Has anyone stopped and thought, why is cancer so prevalent today? Why is there so much cancer, like, just running through our communities and just, killing people?
It's really interesting. This morning I was packing lunch for my son, and my son's a bit health conscious. So I had bought these cookies, and Shaq is like, look, get them to eat more whole foods and wholesome foods. But I still bought cookies. I'm like, every so often they may want to have cookies. So I brought these wafers, and I put it into his lunch. When I was repacking his lunch this morning, I saw they were still there. I'm like, Uthman, you didn't eat this. He's like, Baba, look at the wrapper. So the wrapper, it said, this food can be linked to birth defects and cancer. It's vanilla and strawberry wafers, cookies, that were made for kids. I just bought them like this. It's on sale, etc.
That's who they attack. That's what we need to understand. These food industries, these corporations, these governments, they're not here for the benefit of the people. None of these people actually care to say, oh, let's make the population healthy. We really care about the population. This is a craziness that we think, oh, Johnson & Johnson, oh, Nabisco, these are great companies. They must be doing some great stuff for us. No. Half the ingredients, if you look at the foods that you're eating, I mean, I go to people's houses and I look at their pantries and it's
That's
just
why I don't invite them over.
cookies and candies and this foods and that packaged foods and this, packaged spices and all kinds of stuff that nothing is made from scratch, right? Everything is just somewhat ready-made or all kinds of snacks. Look at the ingredients. I can guarantee you that if you look at your ingredients, you won't even know half the stuff in the ingredients. And it's funny, I have a client who actually, I asked him one time, I said, what do you do? What's your business? He said, my business is I sell food chemicals to food companies. The stuff that you guys don't know what is in the ingredients? I sell those. And most of those are carcinogens. Most of those. All the red dyes, all the blue dyes, meaning cancer-causing agents, right? Carcinogen is cancer-causing agents that you're putting into your body. We have this, and I'm going to go a little further. It's not just the food. Right? We have to start thinking a little bit more further. The stuff that we use as products, right? What do we wash our clothes with? What do we wash our dishes with? Those Cascade little packets that people get? They're so infatuated with them. It's just a little square packet you throw into the thing and boom, it's done. Those things, every single product that we use, you have to be, and it's crazy, right? Like, oh my God, how am I supposed to live in this world? Like a caveman.
I just want to jump in for a moment. Before someone's like, oh, this is a conspiracy theory, let's just unpack this for a moment. In the 50s, there was research, and this was just recently declassified in mainstream media. So I don't want anyone to think, oh, what is this conspiracy theory?
No, there's no.
When you're looking at, what did they blame? Those of you who grew up in the 80s like me, what did they blame for people becoming overweight? What was in the foods? Fats. If you look at something called macronutrients, what are macronutrients? How do you explain them?
They're the macro is meaning the majority of the food that of the makeup of the food that you eat.
Yeah, the three major essential categories in which food will fall into that will help fuel a person. Those will be proteins, which help build the muscle, fat, which helps the type of absorption, and you have carbohydrates that serves as a fuel, and fats also serve as a fuel as well. So they blamed fats. They said fats, and then this whole movement of trans fats, and now no trans fat, etc. Now, what did they unveil 3 years ago? What was declassified? Yes, it was never fats that were the problem. Sugars were the problem. In this past half century, when fats were demonized, which are actually a macronutrient, I mean, you shouldn't overconsume anything, but they were demonized, people began to eat things with a lot of sugar in it. Guess what's gone up? Obesity and diabetes. Now, someone might say, well, I thought the FDA looked out for us. Allah looks out for us. Our Prophet looks out for us. And we look out for one another. We have to be careful.
The FDA approves a certain amount of carcinogens in your food. This is a known fact. You can go to their website and you can read this. There's a 0.03% of rat poop allowed in hot dogs and any kind of sausage meats. There is a certain amount of carcinogen foods that you could, here's, Philadelphia cream cheese. Here's a great one. Philadelphia cream cheese has sawdust. Do you guys know what sawdust is? Anyone ever cut lumber? If you cut lumber, there's dust falls. It's called sawdust. They actually use sawdust in foods. They do. You can look it up. So if you think it's a conspiracy, go home and start researching all the ingredients and all the foods that you eat. Everything. You start with your cream cheeses, start with your mayonnaise, start with anything and everything that you eat. Start looking at your detergents. People in our community also have another rampant illness that's flying around, and that's autoimmune disorders. This is huge. I don't know if anyone's noticed this, especially in the female community, in the Muslimas. It's been rampant in the last 5 years. Autoimmune disorder is what? That means that your own body, your own immune system is attacking your body. It's a huge issue. It's almost like cancer, and sometimes it does cause cancer more often than not. And when I had I had a friend whose wife had a very critical autoimmune disorder where they gave her 2 years to live, and so she went into a kind of a hyper mode of understanding, how did this happen and why did this happen, right? And literally as she started going through all of her products in the house, she started realizing she couldn't use her detergent, she couldn't use her soaps, her shampoos, her, anything, cleaning products, from cleaning your house to your dishes to your clothes, every single thing she had to remove from her life. She's still alive, alhamdulillah, 15 years later today. But one of the reasons is because she was able to go back and remove all of these chemicals and had to replace them with natural. So it was very difficult. She lives a very difficult life, I'm not going to lie to you. But there is proof. So if you don't believe it, go and look at your ingredients. You won't even recognize half of them. And if you don't recognize half of them, start researching. Research each ingredient. And it's not just the ingredient that you have to research. You have to research what is that ingredient made of. Many times they put an ingredient there, and when you go in and find out, that's not the raw ingredient. There's 3 or 4 different ingredients or chemicals that make up that ingredient.
Now when you're looking at,
look at it.
When you're looking at this idea of like food, Allah Ta'ala says in Quran, Ya ayyuhan nas, kulu mimma fil ardi halalan طيبة. He didn't stop at halal. He didn't stop at halal. Halal is that which is permissible. But tayyib, and there's discussions about what tayyib is. But I want to, before even we go to what those discussions are, let's look at a different verse. Ya ayyuhar rusul, O messengers, kulu min at-tayyibat, eat from that which is pure. What's after that? Wa'malu salihah. Eat from that which is pure and do good deeds. The scholars of tafsir say, even though this is not waw sababiyya, meaning a causative particle, it still acts like that. One of the means you can take is, O messengers, eat from that which is pure and do good deeds. But it could also be taken, O messengers, eat from that which is pure so you can do good deeds. The purity of the food, the source of the food, it fuels a person to do good. And this is why when we stop at this discussion of halal, oh brothers, it's halal, is UD on it, is it certified? Okay, fine. But is it pure? Because halal only takes a person so far. So we're looking at diet and dieting. First of all, we don't encourage dieting. We really don't encourage that. Because dieting pretty much says, I have a goal, usually it's a superficial goal, it's a cosmetic goal. I want to reach this weight or this, I want to fit into this dress before this wedding. Yeah, and it's based on a time. After 4, you know when people go to Ramadan, they say, I'm going to put this thing away, whatever that is, that might be a vice, for all of Ramadan. What are they sort of telling themselves? After Ramadan, I'm going to jump back into it. That's not a good intention, right? So same thing in dieting. Oh, I have my brother's wedding's coming up, so I have to eat well till then. Which means what? After I'm going to go crazy. So we don't encourage dieting, diets. So diet, when we look at diet, I'm going to turn it over to you in a moment, there's going to be micronutrients and macronutrients. Micronutrients, we'll put them aside, it's a longer discussion. Macronutrients, when we look at the macronutrients from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, what does that mean? The existence of protein, the existence of fats, and the existence of carbohydrates. All 3 existed within the hadith. But if you look, and people say, well brother, he didn't have that many types of food. Look, there are narrations that mention sawiq and other types of sweet foods that he could have eaten all the time, but he didn't. He had fresh fruits. He often paired fruits, so he looked at something that was acidic with that which was a base. He ate meat. He ate chicken. He ate the shoulder of a lamb. And there would be fat there as well. But he didn't indulge. And unfortunately today what we have done is that we've taken something that serves as fuel. You know how it's supposed to be, we eat to live. Now what does it become? We live to eat. And we sort of changed an important component in the Sunnah. You know, can you imagine if I came to you and I said, brother, you have to fill up your car. Or you have to fill up your oil. So like we do the oil change, we fill up the oil. 5 quarts, you're done. I'm like, no, you know what? It's good oil. Let's add 3 more quarts. Car wouldn't function properly. It'd begin to smoke, it might have a hard time starting. Why? Because everything has a had and a limit. And so with diet as well, there's the quality and types of food, and there's the limit on the amount. Limit on the amount. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. I forgot where we were.
So you were talking about the idea. So I just wanted to, because I'm running out of time, we were talking about carcinogens and the types of ingredients in the food.
Yes.
Now we have to research it.
So yeah, that's one thing. That's one aspect, is what are we putting into our bodies? This is one of the most important things that we have to understand, right? So take a good hard look at how you're eating and what you're eating. Now that's the most important thing, or what you're eating mostly. Another, it even goes down to the oils that we're using, right? A lot of times people say, oh, well, the Indian food is not too bad or whatnot. We have to look at, the depth of this is pretty deep. So, it's really important to know, to kind of do your own research and understand how things work. Oils have something called a smoke point. I don't know if anyone knows this. There's a smoke point that oils have, right? But basically what that means is that after you heat after the oil reaches a certain temperature, it becomes toxic. The oil breaks down and it becomes toxic. That's why they say don't use virgin olive oil to cook, right? Usually, I'm sure more and more people have heard this now as it's become more and more common knowledge. Do not eat virgin olive oil, or do not use it to cook, because after that, it has a very low set point, very low smoke point, which means that at a quick temperature, a lower temperature, it becomes toxic. The oil starts having toxins. So a lot of the problems with our Indian food is that we cook the living daylights out of that food, right? That's what salan is. You put it in the thing and it's just cooking, and then you put a pressure cooker in there, it makes it 10 times worse, and then you just, you eat, you're like, oh, it's just beef and sabzi, there's just vegetables and meat in here, it can't be bad for you. Well, now you've taken something good and you've made it something toxic, right? Because you've used the oil and you've pushed it past the smoke point, and now you're wondering, well, how are people getting? So the Southeast Asian diet actually causes the most problems. This is a true fact, right? Okay, when it comes to cancers, especially colon cancer, I had to deal with that personally one time in my family, and I found out at that time the doctor had told me that the Southeast Asian diet causes the highest prevalence of colon cancer. So what is it? It's the oils. It's the oils and the fake masala that we use in our food is what it is. Second thing is, I think Sheikh Saad touched on this. Food is sustenance. Food is literally fuel for our bodies. This is how we have to look at it. This is a prophetic way of looking at it too. I think people, how many calories should I eat? We can get into all of that technical stuff. That's something that you should do on your own time. But speaking about just health and fitness in general, the Prophet ate, how he ate, when he ate full, he ate one third, right? 1/3 air, 1/3 water, 1/3 food. I mean, it's such, even today when you talk to like doctors and scientists, they tell you what they say, drink water first. Make sure that you drink enough water. So how much food, the way we look at food, today food has become this disgusting, ritual, right? We have a wedding, oh my God, it's all about the food. Who cares about if their marriage is going to work or not, if there's going to be halal marriage, if there's music, who cares? Food has to be, the main point of the wedding. Nobody cares about anything else. We go to someone's house, it's all about the food. Everywhere you go, any function, even you come to the masjid for functions, I know a lot of times when you have these group functions, there's food has to be served, otherwise people will not come. This has become a thing, right? Oh, if there's no food, no one's going to show up. And we base our lives around food. It's pretty pathetic if you think about it, because food is supposed to be a tool for us, a fuel for us, in order for us to live our lives. Now we're, like he said, right? We are living like, we live to eat. And, there's a profound saying that says, eat your food like medicine today, so tomorrow you're not eating your medicine like food. Right? And it's true. If you see some of the older people in our communities, they have a pill box. Right? They have a pill box of not just Monday through Saturday, but AM and PM, and there's like literally 20 to 30 pills that these people are taking per day. This is common. In older Indian men, you'll see it. I've seen it many times, 15, 20 pills a day, very easily they're taking. And then they're taking insulin shots on top of that too. Why? Because they just didn't care about their health while they were, as they were aging. So food is not just what you're eating, how much you're eating is also very important. If you're eating for sustenance, then you're gonna treat it like sustenance, right? Like Sheikh Saad said, you don't go into your car and you fill up the tank and then you say, oh, it's full, let me keep putting more in, this is great gas. No one does that. Everybody knows that, right? People who have expensive cars in our community, this is another fad. Everybody has these super expensive cars, right? I mean, I've never seen a community like ours anywhere else. I've been here for 45 years in America. I've never seen a community that has so many Lamborghinis and Mercedes and the best of the best cars. Alhamdulillah, right? But what do you see if those people are very particular of what they put in their car, right? What gas goes in there? Not just it has to be premium or super premium, but what companies? Is it Shell? Is it BP? Is it Mobil? These things we care about everything else, but when it comes to our bodies, it seems like we've neglected these thoughts, right? So how much we eat, how much we're putting into our bodies, and what we're putting into our bodies are two very important aspects of being healthy.
So let's look at these two a little closely now. And Mudge, you can jump whenever you want.
Go ahead.
He's always the quiet one in the group.
I'll wait for you.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say a good rule of thumb to see what you should eat is if you don't understand the ingredients, then you probably shouldn't be eating it. My wife started doing this recently is she'll look at the ingredients, and if she doesn't understand what it is, she just won't even get it for the house. And it's frustrating for me because, as you can see, as my size, I love to eat cookies and desserts and whatnot, and it's all from just bad eating.
But alhamdulillah, she makes it at home and very. And look, one thing I want to mention over here, this is not just about men or women, old, young. This is everyone. When you get to the last slide with lifestyle changes, let's look at a couple of quick things here. Number one, amount. The sunnah is to eat how much of our stomachs? 1/7, according to Sahih Muslim. 1/3 is the limit, the upper limit. So much in my life, I've always been taught 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. That's the upper limit. The actual limit, the actual amount is 1/7. The hadith mentions a couple bites to sit up straight. Now we can't do that today. Why? Because a lot of variables. So let's be practical as well. Practicality number one is that, okay, you may not eat 1/7, but don't eat 7/7 either. So what's the easiest way to make sure that we don't overeat? Try to restrict ourselves to one plate. And don't make those huge like platters, just one plate. Secondly, the majority of the plate should be protein. It should not be carbohydrates and fats, it should be protein. And eat the protein first. Protein is very satiating. It will fill the stomach up. It will allow us to make healthier choices. And even if we do go towards the carbs and the fats, we probably will not put as much on the plate because the protein will fill us up. Along with that, when we're looking at quote unquote filling up, if we can eat on the floor, do so with one or both feet into our stomach, so when we stand up, we feel ourselves decompressing and we actually have more room left. But if you can't, as Shakil was mentioning from the hadith, don't lean back and eat. Sit up and eat. When you lean back, one, it's disrespectful according to the sunnah, but two, it allows more to come into the stomach. It allows more to come into the stomach. So, one plate, protein first. If you can sit and eat with the legs up, great. If you have to sit in a chair, whatever, don't lean back. And then, if you can precede it with water, that'd be wonderful. Now, so that's that. Let's move on to the importance of strength training. Okay. So the next thing we have is the importance of strength training. Go ahead, take it away.
So yeah, this is a little bit. I think this is the most important part of the.
Left.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the most important parts of our presentation. Is people start thinking, okay, we want to get healthy, we want to get strong, we want to have good quality of life, or longevity, and right away, if I ask a lot of people, so what do you think? What should you do to get healthy? The older Indian community will say, oh, we take walks every day after we eat. We take a long walk. Okay, great. What else? Oh, we play sports. A lot of people, youth, will come and say, oh, I play basketball, man. I play basketball like 3 times a week, I'm in great shape. Or I do MMA fighting, right? So all of these things, people come and say to me that these are healthy. But the reality is that, like we were talking about this, I think in the beginning of the talk as well, is, to measure your health, it's really like grip strength. How many push-ups can you do? I think this was a new scientific study that came out at least 5 years ago, where they said if you can do 40 push-ups, the likely chance of having arteriosclerotic disease or heart problems is 90% less, right? It's directly correlated with your strength. So, I mean, this is something that I've been kind of touting for a long time, talking about this for like maybe 15, 20 years, and people were like, no, that's just nice to have muscles. It's nice to be strong. It's crazy. Lifting weights is the waste of time. But today, if you look at it scientifically and medically, all the research is pointing to the number one, the best way to get healthy, the best way to get in shape, the best way to maintain health is to lift weights. Strength training, right? Not resistance training. Resistance training, people will start using bands and stuff. Weight training is the key, the most important part of staying healthy is weight training, right? So many things that we can go into about why weight training is better. If people are taking walks are good too. Uphill walks. Why? Because they cause strain, stress. Weighted walks. If you're an old person who can't, in Illinois we don't have too many hills, and you want to take a walk, you should take a backpack, put some weight into it and walk. What does that do? It builds muscle. So body composition is what really determines how your health is, right? A lot of people will say, well, I'm pretty skinny, I don't have a stomach, so I must be healthy. No, your body is either made up of one of two things. It's either made up of muscle or it's made up of fat, right? It's usually a combination of both, right? So all your tissues should have, you have fat and muscle tissue. If you to have more fat tissue. Even if you're skinny or whether you're overweight, you're going to have health issues. You're going to have diabetes problems, you're going to have hypertension, you're going to have all kinds of issues. And if your body composition is muscle. Now, I'm going to tell you something. When people think muscle, they all automatically start thinking, oh, we got to be like, big dudes with huge ripping muscles. If you're a 145-pound person, you can be super muscular at 145 pounds, or you could be just super fat at 145 pounds. So it is not about the size of the muscle, it's about the composition of your body. It should just all be muscle, right? Men and women. Women have this huge misconception that, oh no, women should not be muscular. Women should just be, skinny and toned and fragile. That's a recipe for disaster, right? This is a recipe for disaster, and we see it in our community. Women, because they bear children, that itself is a huge it's taxing on the body. Men will never understand this, but giving birth to 1, 2, 3, 4 children, like most of our women in our community do, is very taxing on the body. It causes an accelerated amount of aging to happen, right? But it could be counterfeited. It could be countered by actually exercising. If you see this, I mean, it's amazing. I've seen people like this who have 2, 3 kids, and their body is, like they're 19, 20 years old and never had kids, right? Because they've maintained exercise and diet and whatnot.
Even recovery from delivery is directly correlated to strength training and lifting prior to delivery.
Right.
And sometimes we don't see these correlations, but it's actually very much over there.
And it's actually healthy to lift weights during your pregnancy, as long as you start before your pregnancy, right? So if you start working out before pregnancy, you can go through pregnancy and lift weights, and then once you have a child, within, people take 3 months to recover. I've seen these women recover in less than a month and a half, they're back in the gym. So weight training is the key to health. And so you build muscle, right? When you build muscle, you decrease the fat composition in your body. That's one of the most important things. This is what, and one of the main things about building muscle, there's lots of things about lifting weights. One is it increases bone density. So as we get older, especially in women, they have something called osteoporosis.
And osteopenia as well.
Osteopenia is pretty much, almost the same. So osteoporosis starts happening, especially in women after menopause in their 40s and 50s, where they start losing bone density. You see this is very common. A lot of almost every Muslim woman I know takes osteopenia medication. So how do you counter that? In men too. Men will lose bone density as we get older as well. Our bones get fragile, right? You'll see bones get fragile. The counter to that, the best way to build bone density is by putting weight on it, weight bearing.
Yes,
bearing exercise.
weight bearing.
So anytime you do weight bearing exercise, that's why I say even if you're old and you want to walk with a backpack full of weight, it's very helpful because that strain on your bone, on your skeletal system will allow you to increase your bone density.
And you have to look at, practically speaking, just think, if my bones are not carrying muscle, they don't have to be dense. If my bones are carrying muscle, because muscle weighs more than fat, right? If it's carrying more muscle, then the bone has to adapt. The density has to begin to increase.
Yep.
Now, we're not saying go pick up 1,000 pounds. But at the same time, because we don't, and women in particular, I don't want to be so big, I don't want to be jacked. Honestly, to look like these guys do, it's like a lifetime journey, okay? MashaAllah. MashaAllah. The rest of us, we're just going to lift weights. We're going to look normal. Women and men alike. But, look, from there's a university in Australia in Brisbane, the report came, it's a very interesting study that shows that strength training, it decreases the onset of dementia. So weightlifting decreases onset of dementia. 2 months ago, a study came out that said weightlifting and strength training, it is more effective on people struggling with mental health than the actual medication they give. And if you just look at it from just a very practical perspective, if I'm lifting 5 pounds today, and after 2 weeks I'm lifting 10 pounds, that's a win, that's a gain. I'm seeing improvement. It's an improvement-based lifestyle. My body gets strong, I'm able to do more, a person gains more confidence, etc. What else is it linked with? There's others I should have written down. Good.
One of the things with strength training also is you're mentally prepared, or you're mentally increasing your strength mentally.
Yes.
For example, if I'm doing 50 pounds today and it's kind of difficult for me, and I go 3 months, 4 months, with that same weight, and all of a sudden now I start going up slowly, that difficulty in pushing yourself, you're mentally making yourself stronger. So what's that going to do? that's going to help your mental health, that's going to help you get stronger, that's going to help push you and have goals for you. Now you're not thinking about, hey, X, Y, and Z that are not going to do anything in your life. Now you're thinking about something that's going to affect your life directly. Too many times our mind starts wandering into 800 different directions, and we start thinking of what if for all the things except what is exactly going to help our lives.
So literally, I mean, this is scientifically speaking, weight training has a profound impact on your health. A huge, profound, mental, spiritual, everything. I mean, even to the point where recently I've been hearing even a lot of scholars start speaking about this, older scholars, where they said that if you're not exercising, you're most likely not practicing your religion properly either. It's truth, right? I mean, because it takes a certain amount of self-discipline and accountability for you to go and actually take care of your health, right? If a person can't take care of their health, they're not going to be able to take care of much else either. And this is scientifically proven, as well as it's proven in Deen, as that first hadith said. There's a reason why the strong believer is better than the weak believer. And for women, I want to make one more point, is that we shouldn't think, okay, you know, I see someone, weight train, they take these little 2-3 pound dumbbells and they're just hitting those for the rest of their life. Everyone's goal should be to lift more and more and more weight, especially as we get older. You should try to lift more weight. So if you're starting with 10 pounds, you should be like, okay, I have a goal in a couple of weeks, I'll be doing 15 pounds, then 20 pounds. There should be no end game, no end goal on how much weight we can lift. It's extremely important to be strong, extremely important to have good grip strength. It's extremely important to be able to be functionally strong. And the way you get functionally strong is by actually strength training, right? Because you're not going to be sitting here and doing, you know, we're not in the age today where we're going and getting water from the wells and we're going out and cutting our own meat and then we're carrying it from, 5 miles away to our house. This is the way that people lived up until 100 years ago, right? Even if you had to load a wagon and go get lumber because you had to start a fire, I mean, everything was manual. Everything was manual up until 100 years ago. Everything. Every single thing that you could think of was manual. You wanted light, it was a manual process. You wanted food, it was a manual process. Right? You wanted something to drink, it was a manual process. You couldn't take a shower, you couldn't wash yourself, you couldn't drink water unless someone went to the well, dropped a bucket in there, lifted it up, and then carried it over there to the house. It wasn't like everybody had a well in their backyard today, like how we do in unincorporated areas. It was not like that.
And people often say, well, brother, why people didn't work out in the past? They didn't have to.
No.
This is in response to our lifestyle, the way it changed.
Yeah.
And we have to accept that. Just like we accept the fact that our kids, you need to get degrees now. In the past, maybe they didn't have degrees, like college degrees, etc. Fine. Oh, you need to have a bigger home now. You can't just live in a hut. Fine. But so things change. And part of that is we have to adapt. And part of adapting is taking these steps. And that leads us straight to lifestyle changes and Q&A.
So
I'm going to actually step away. So I have to go to Milwaukee, pick up my kids, and come back.
What time do we stand? What time do we end?
It's supposed to end at 9:25, but you can just take questions and stuff now. And you can do this and take questions, inshallah.
Okay.
Yeah. Keep going.
What time is Isha?
10.
Oh.
Yeah, but they have food.
Yeah. So so another thing about strength training that we should probably realize a little bit is people start thinking, we have to read Quran, we have to do hadith, we have this, we have that, we don't have time for this, brother. The reality I think that we're kind of missing here, and I think Sheikh Saad covered this in the beginning, truly is that the Prophet's life was very physical. We don't understand this. We all sit here all happy and safe in our little spaces and think, we don't need to do this anymore. Well, the reality is Islam is actually on a decline. It's been on a decline for the last century and a half or 2 centuries. And that's ever since we've lost our physical strength. Our physical power in the world doesn't exist anywhere. It doesn't exist anywhere. There's nobody scared of a Muslim country. There's no Muslim country that people look at and say, oh my God, we're scared of them. No. This country dominates not because they're the smartest. They're not. If you look at our stats, we're actually one of the dumber countries in the world. Literally, in every aspect of literacy, we're the worst. We're nowhere near the top. The only reason this country actually is dominating the world is because of its physical strength. Right? They have armies that they train. They have soldiers who all go out and kill people in a heartbeat. Right? They have machinery that can destroy countries in a second. This is physical power. This is nothing else. The world is ruled by physical power. The Prophet fought 19 plus wars in his lifetime. 19 plus wars. Do you think that the Sahaba, just one day, the Malaika came and said, oh, here, take a sword and let's just start swinging, and we're gonna beat all these people and we're gonna take over the world? The Muslim empire reached the gates of China at one time. Do you think the Malaika just did all that by themselves? They just came into the bodies of the Sahaba, and these Sahabas, 15,000 were fighting 50,000, impossible. They trained. They were all trained. Right, and this is my point. When I asked you in the beginning, oh, what is it to be healthy? People, oh, we do play basketball. Waste of time. Waste of time. You play sports, you're wasting your time. You have to answer. Remember, everyone has to answer for the waste of time. Organized sports, technically, is anti-Islamic. Anti-Islamic to play sports. Organized sports, spend your time in sports, spend your money in sports, completely. Completely. Where in Islam did the Prophet say, hey, let's have an archery competition and we're going to give you $50,000 for all the Sahaba who can hit the... Never. But every Sahaba had to know how to do archery. Every Sahaba had to know how to ride a horse. They had to know how to swim, and they know how to wield a sword. Enough that one man should be able to fight 50 men. Khalid bin Walid fought 15 men at one time by himself and killed them all by himself. All by himself. The Prophet encouraged him. He was a sword of Allah. He was a sword of Allah. So my point, the reason I'm really bringing this up is because we've become this weak community, this weak ummah that thinks that this is okay for us to be weak. One of the strongest sunnahs, the most prevalent sunnahs of the Prophet was his strength. Was the fact that this man who spread the deen in 23 years to last till the end of time, he spent his time in 19 wars. Sahaba were trained to fight. This is what Islam promotes. Islam promotes strength training. Islam does promote, go learn how to fight. There's no problem with that. But spending time playing basketball, spending time playing baseball, taking your children to these little leagues, it's a waste of time. You know where this comes from? This comes from the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire decided one time that their people were asking too many questions and they were going to uprise against the government. So what did they do? They built this huge Colosseum and they started having gladiators fight till death. And what happened after that? All of Rome fell because they didn't care. They were so involved in sports that they didn't care about what was going on around the world. Nobody stood up. Nobody protested. Nobody stopped the government. Nobody did anything. What do you think the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, what is that today's world? That is the government's trick to take your eyes off of your health, take your eyes off your world, take your eyes off of your deen, forget about everything. Muslim men spend 20 hours a week watching sports during football season, basketball season, and all that. Where does that time, how do we answer for that time, and how do we justify that time, right? So strength training is part of the Sunnah. It is part of the way of the prophetic life, and not only that, but it is proven to be the healthiest thing, for mankind. So inshallah, I'll end with that because I think we were supposed to end at 9:25. It's already 9:32. If anybody has any questions, we can take some questions right now. I guess I'm all by myself, but any questions for anybody here at all about health or fitness or anything like that, inshallah? If not, we can close it. So, it's, I use butter. So I'll just be honest with you. I just cook everything in butter because I believe butter is the healthiest way to cook. But like seed oils, all these oils are pretty bad for you. It's very hard to, I think non-virgin olive oil is pretty good from what I hear. The seed oils are no good. So I'll tell you that right now. Canola oil is no good. Coconut oil is good. Ghee is good. So these things are good. I make everything in butter, just to be honest with you. And butter is good fat. There was a time where people were against butter and eggs and whatnot. I don't know if you remember in the 80s, people came out and said, oh, eggs will increase your cholesterol. It's really bad for your health. If you go back then about 10, 15 years ago, they came back and said, actually, eggs are a necessary fat. We need this for good health. And then they found out there's other elements in eggs that are extremely important for brain function. And so today, eggs are considered good again, right? So I would say butter is the best thing to cook in. Anything artificial and supplemental, you have to be careful of. You have to be extremely careful of these things. I know that a lot of times you go to the doctor's office and they'll say, oh yeah, give your kids these drinks and stuff. Nothing can beat real food. Real food is the is the absolute best. There's no comparison to this. So, I mean, anything artificial, I would be very, very careful of. You don't know what's in there. Sometimes they list it, sometimes they don't. This country has some weird rules. Sometimes there's certain things that they don't even have to list. If you go into the FDA and read their sites, there's certain things you don't even have to list. And if you're buying products from outside, imported products, China, Malaysia, India, all these things that come from there, there's no regulation there. Who's regulating that? It's just coming. Nobody cares, right? So it's just, feed it and die. It's a way of doing population control in reality is what this is.
How about that chicken, eating chicken? Because nowadays we see that this 40 days they are making a small bird.
Yeah, I agree.
So is it good?
No, so that's what remember I was talking about this in the beginning, that the more organic stuff costs a lot more money, right? So I know that Crescent chicken is a great example. They have 2-3 different qualities of chicken that they make. They have one quality that they sell for $3 a pound. They have one that sells for $4 a pound. They have one that sells for $5 a pound. So I did a little research. I said, what is the difference between these chickens? I was surprised because the different places were selling these different boxes. And I actually have a very close friendship with the Fatima Meats, the people who own the Fatima meat company. And I realized, and they were telling me that the more expensive chicken is hormone-free, cage-free type of chicken, and then the cheaper chicken is usually hormone-fed and stuff. So it's not as prevalent in the zabiha market as it is in if you ever go to Julasco, chicken breast costs $1 a pound. It's unbelievable. If you go to the zabiha store, it costs $3-4 a pound because they're a little bit more. They can't usually buy from the same farms as those like Tyson and stuff like that. But if you go to Crescent and you go to the upper quality, higher quality, and I think Fatima also sells a higher quality meat that's like at least $1.50 or $2 or more per pound. So those meat, that one they can certify that it's fed no hormones and those. And you're absolutely right. That's the whole farming industry, the entire agriculture industry in America. All of these things are affected by this. Everything. The fruits that you eat, the vegetables that you eat, everything. The seeds the Monsanto seeds that became a big thing in the media like 15, 20 years ago. The problem with that is that, if you grow crop with those seeds, you can't take the seeds from those crop, plant it again, and then grow it again. That's unnatural. That's extremely unnatural. So most of the produce that we get here, and the funny thing is they made that food chart that they had made, they teach you in high school, in school, there's a food pyramid and whatnot, and vegetables, this and that. It was made by the agriculture company. It was not made by science or doctors or researchers or scientists or anybody like that. It was literally made by the agriculture company to make sure that they can sell more vegetables and whatnot, what they're growing here. So that too is very difficult. It is a very difficult time that we're living in right now, and you probably will wonder why though. Why are they doing this, right? I mean, this is not a conspiracy theory, but people do talk about it, and during COVID, you heard this a lot, population control, right? And how do they do population control? They can't just come out and just shoot 1 million people and kill them, or drop a nuclear bomb on a country and say, well, we just got rid of 10 million people, the world's gonna be a better place. No, it's a long-term plan. Increase cancer and increase sterility. So if you notice that, in today's world, there's a guy here who went to school with me, he'll remember this. When we were in 8th grade, girls at that time looked like little girls. They looked like little girls. Today, if you go to 8th grade and look at it, they look like women. They look like women. Because the hormones that are pumped into the food today is causing them to form, much quicker. Much quicker. This was never the case before. This is just in the last 20, 30 years you're seeing this. The food, the snack foods, the meat, everything is hormone pumped. And then you also have a huge issue, and you can see this in our community, and fertility, right? People are having much more difficult time, having children. And another scientific fact is that many youth from their teenage years to their 20s today have very low testosterone levels. Much lower than the medical index that they should be having. So you should be having about 900 to 1,000 for their ages. They're usually around 200-300. And this is huge research that came out. So it's all in all the food. The less snacking that you do, the better it is. The less garbage that you bring into your home from the grocery store, the better it is. If you have children at home, people ask me, oh, well, we have kids. They only want to eat mac and cheese and peanut butter jelly and salad. I said, why? That's your doing, right? That's the parents' doing. That's nobody else's doing. The parents have done this. My kids at my house will only eat what I eat, right? I can't afford to buy everything for them and then everything for me. I buy my food. It's chicken breast, it's steak, it's fish, it's couscous, it's rice, and potatoes and broccoli. That's it, right? And whenever lunchtime is, this is what they have to eat. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. At breakfast, there's only eggs and oatmeal. At lunch, there's only chicken, and at dinner time, there's only chicken or fish, and that's what they eat. You did a good on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Question.
Yes.
So, what do you say about the snacks made from food, like fruits?
The snacks made from fruits. It depends. Are you talking about those snack foods? I mean, again, right? It's not just fruits in there. It never can be, right? It can never be just fruits. They're there. Read the ingredients and you'll see what's in there. Even the ones that they say all natural. There's a list. It's at least 10 to 15 items in there. How is it all natural if there's 10, 15 things? You know what's in chicken? What's the ingredients in chicken? Chicken. What's the ingredient in broccoli? Just broccoli. What's the ingredients in beef? Just beef, right? But when you read the snack thing, there's this acid, that acid, this chemical, that chemical. Why? Oh, we need to preserve. Preservation is a huge problem. If you have preserved food, that's a big problem, right? Food should be something that rots. If your food is not rotting, there's a problem with that, right? So most of those snacks don't rot. You can keep them for 20, 30 years and they'll be fine. Canned foods, people say, oh, there's something coming, we need to save our food, so go get canned foods and eat it. It's a good way of dying quickly.
What sort of detergent or soap?
That's another good. That's another good one. The people who were fighting the autoimmune diseases, they were usually making their own soaps and own detergents and stuff like that. There's a huge community of people out there, believe it or not, who actually make all their own products, and they kind of have gone backwards in time a little bit. We're like, we're in such a technologically advanced era. Everything is just at the fingertips. We're living the George Jetson era. Literally, the Jetsons era is what we're living today, right? I mean, even food, you can eat like a tiny little bar, and they'll have 300 calories with 20 grams of protein and this much carbohydrates, and that's a whole meal, right? That's a meal. They say it's a meal replacement bar. So it really. It's a difficult time. You have to kind of do a lot of research. Tide, Gain, all these things have a lot of stuff in there. People have all these skin diseases nowadays that you noticed, and they have all these issues. Then they start changing their detergents. Babies have problems. They start changing the detergents. I don't know if there's anything natural out there. I really don't. It's really difficult. It's a really difficult time to check that stuff. What's that? I didn't hear you.
Can lifting weights from a young age stunt your growth?
So anything in your young age it could be a risk. So I'll tell you why. Because until you're the age of 19, 20 years old, for males and females, around 20, 21 years old, you're still growing and all your bones haven't fused properly, right? So they're still in the process of fusing. So they're still growing. So when you start putting an extreme amount of stress on those bones, we don't know what could happen. Right? Anything could happen. First of all, your bones are not strong enough. They're not completely done developing. Your platelets, all your bone plates have not completely fused. So that's another issue that we're dealing with. I do see high schoolers lifting really heavy nowadays. I always tell high schoolers and kids under the age of 21, weightlifting is okay to a certain extent, but not extreme weightlifting. No power lifting. More of conditioning training is what I always recommend for them. Like jump boxes, sleds, stuff like that. I'm not anti-sports to say don't play sports and it's the worst thing. We used to play sports in my era for fun. That was what we did. Instead of playing Nintendo or watching TV, we would go outside and we would play basketball, football, and whatnot, and that was good. That was a good thing for that age, right? But as you get older, you have to start kind of moving into weightlifting and stuff like that, and sports is not really going to keep you healthy. What's that? Diet? I think what Sheikh Saad covered: a high protein, high fat, and a decent carbohydrate diet. So a balanced meal all the time, whether you're weightlifting or not. Sorry, sister, go ahead.
It's okay.
Yeah. So the sources that, I mean, geez, everything's on Google nowadays, right? So, I mean, yeah. Yeah, I mean, what I do usually when I'm researching these ingredients is if you just type in the ingredient, a whole bunch of stuff pops up. You want to stick to the kind of the more known medical journals or more scientific researchers. There's some people who are writing their own stuff out there. I definitely would stay away from that. But I just research to see what that ingredient is, right? That's what I'm looking at. I just want to know the definition of that ingredient. And then once I have that definition of that ingredient, then I find out usually, this ingredient is made up of like 2 or 3 different ingredients. So go and find out what are those 2 or 3 different ingredients. And that's just kind of the way we do the research. I don't have any specific people. I mean, there's one guy who I know who actually sells this stuff, who sells food chemicals. And so he has a lot of knowledge. I call out to him to ask him stuff because he's actually manufacturing it and selling it to food companies. Once they take it, they mix it up and they do all kinds of stuff to, and to create their products. So he doesn't really follow it all the way through, but he just has an idea. If I give him an ingredient, he has a pretty good idea of what those things are made of. But I mean, again, when you're doing research, you're breaking down the ingredients. You just want to know what each of these ingredients mean. What does it mean? If you're looking at a label, what is this, so-and-so acid, what does that mean? What is it made of? Where does it come from? And if it's not coming from a natural source, then you have an issue, right? If it's chemically produced somewhere, then you have an issue. Second thing is for weight training for elderly people, it's so important. I would say, body weight is the way to start, right? So even if they're having knee pain and they're having back pains and whatnot, it's starting with the body weight exercises, like, you're doing squats slowly, marching, walking with weights. You kind of have to test your own self to see where the pain is and where the pain isn't.
Now we have to start.
Okay. Is it time for it?
No, of course it is much before, yeah.
Okay. Is it on time?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, just kind of test yourself and start with the body weights, and then inshallah start adding weights slowly.